I'll represent him. The words hang in the air like a courtroom blasphemy. Every head turns toward the back of the room. At first, no one moves. Then comes the rustle of fabric, the creak of seats shifting, the low murmurs like a fuse catching fire. A few chuckles ripple forward from the gallery, followed by a sharper bark of laughter. But the young woman in the back does not waver. Her hands clutch a battered manila folder against her chest, and her brown apron still clings to her waist like a flag raised in the wrong place. No one expected her voice to cut through the ceremony of federal procedure. Least of all, Griffin Maddox, seated alone at the defense table, his gaze snapping toward the voice with visible disbelief. He sees her then, Amira Cole, standing at the edge of the courtroom like a shadow that had somehow become solid. Once, not long ago, her father had told her, "One day they'll have to listen." He had said it gently, like someone whispering to a bruise. She had carried that sentence in her back pocket ever since, but it had never felt heavier than it did now. The judge adjusts his glasses slowly, scanning the courtroom until his gaze lands on her. His brow furrows. "Excuse me, Miss Cole, Amira Cole, Your Honor." A beat. The air tightens. "You wish to speak on behalf of Mr. Maddox?" "I do," she says, her voice steady despite the 100 eyes crawling across her skin. "As temporary counsel." Another beat. Then a small uproar from the audience. Muffled laughter, scattered scoffs. Someone near the aisle mutters, "What's next? The janitor presiding?" The judge clears his throat, trying to recover the rhythm of the hearing. "Miss Cole, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, sir. I attended Columbia Law School until my second year. Financial reasons forced me to leave. Since then, I've worked as household staff. But I've never stopped studying. I've tracked economic litigation. I've memorized federal rulings. And I know this case." Lauren Kessler, the prosecutor, stands slowly. Her navy suit gleams under the overhead lights. She tilts her head as if the whole room has lost its mind. "Objection, Your Honor. This is absurd. We are not in a mock trial." The judge holds up a hand, silencing her, then turns to Griffin. "Mr. Maddox, as your counsel has failed to appear, you are permitted to request temporary representation. If," he gestures toward Amira, "you so choose." Griffin's lips curl in disgust. "She cleans my stairwell. What's next? She argues from the pantry?" He mutters it, but not quietly enough. The gallery snickers. Amira steps forward. One pace, then another. "I may not have a license," she says to Griffin, low enough that only the judge and those closest can hear. "But I'm not trying to bury you. Right now, that puts me in a minority." He stares at her, eyes sharp and incredulous. The folder trembles slightly in her hands. But her voice does not. Griffin exhales through his nose. "Fine," he says. "Do your worst." Amira nods and walks down the aisle towards the defense table. The sound of her shoes echoes like a ticking clock. The courtroom watches, eyes narrowing, arms folding. When she reaches the table, she lays down her folder and opens it. The inside bursts with color-coded tabs, handwritten annotations, forensic timestamps, and copies of the very contracts the prosecution plans to weaponize. Lauren Kessler scoffs from across the aisle. "I hope you brought more than highlighters and grocery lists," she sneers. Amira doesn't look up. "I brought logic and receipts." Gasps flicker through the gallery. The judge leans forward, intrigued now. "You may proceed, Miss Cole." Amira lifts a printed document from the folder. "Your Honor," she begins, her voice clear and composed. "On the 12th of March last year, Maddox Tech was approached for a joint venture revision with Leora Capital. The prosecution claims this revision was forged by Mr. Maddox, but the digital signature logs trace back to an IP address in Zurich. And," she turns another page, highlighted in orange. According to the original Securities and Exchange Commission filing dated 2 weeks before, the original contract terms were still legally binding. If any forgery occurred, it was on the plaintiff's end. Lauren's expression curdles. The judge taps his pen slowly against the desk. The gallery leans in. Even the note-taker pauses for a moment. It's not just her knowledge. It's the clarity in her tone, the conviction. It has the weight of someone who had to learn by moonlight and repetition, someone who read until her eyes ached and understood every comma because no one else would explain it. Amira doesn't flinch when Lauren objects again. She simply steps back, allows the judge to speak. "This is compelling," the judge says. "We'll recess until tomorrow to examine this further and determine whether Miss Cole may continue in this capacity." Amira bows slightly. "Thank you, Your Honor." She walks out of the courtroom as silently as she entered it. But no one laughs now. Not even Griffin Maddox. That evening, Amira sits alone in her Newark apartment. The kitchen smells faintly of leftover rice and lemon cleaner. Her apron hangs from the back of a chair. On the table, half a grilled cheese, a mug of cooling coffee, and her open laptop still playing an archived lecture from her favorite trial law professor. She replays the moment in court over and over in her head. Not the judge's words, or Lauren's glare, but Griffin's face, the disbelief, the grudging acknowledgement that followed. As she sifts through her notes, a strange detail catches her attention. The wording of the revised clause. The syntax doesn't match Griffin's past documents. It's foreign, clinical, European in tone. She jots a quick note on the corner of a legal pad. Check language consistency. Compare Leora versus domestic contracts. Her phone buzzes. Unknown number, she answers without thinking. "You were something else today," says a voice, low, amused. "Didn't expect the girl in the apron to flip the room upside down." Amira stiffens. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, "Let's just say, someone in that courtroom has more at stake than you know. Be careful where you stick the stick, Miss Cole. You're poking a bear." The line goes dead. She lowers the phone, heart thudding. Her hand trembles, just for a moment. Fear isn't new. She remembers it from alleyways, from eviction notices, from nights spent quiet so her mother could sleep before the third shift. But this fear? It feels colder, more deliberate. She exhales slowly, then underlines her last note. Tomorrow, she thinks, will not come quietly. "You're poking a bear, Miss Cole. Be careful where you stick the stick." "Do you even remember signing it?" she asks. Griffin Maddox looks up, suddenly unsure. He doesn't answer right away. His fingers are tapping a silver pen against the polished edge of his desk. The room smells like cedar wood and faint citrus from the cleaner his housekeeper uses every morning. But now that Amira is here, no apron, just her gray cardigan and jeans, it feels like the air has shifted. He exhales sharply through his nose, then shrugs. "Of course I signed it. My name's on the damn thing." "That's not what I asked," Amira replies, calm, deliberate. "I asked if you remember opening it, reading it, actually reviewing that specific contract." Griffin leans back in the leather chair. Outside the tall windows of his Upper West Side townhouse, traffic hums below like a lullaby for the rich. But inside, his jaw tightens. "I was in Napa that week, wine conference. My assistant prepped everything." "Paul Temple?" He nods. "He usually sends over whatever needs my attention. I skim, sign, move on." Amira's gaze doesn't shift. "You mean you click and trust?" "Excuse me?" She walks to the bookshelf behind him, running her fingers across a row of unused legal encyclopedias. Ornamental, probably never opened. That contract revision uses legal phrasing I've never seen in your prior agreements. It's not just complex, it's foreign. Griffin scoffs. Contracts are contracts. They all sound like riddles written by paranoid monks. Not this one. The clause they're using to accuse you. It's constructed like something from a European legal firm. He turns slightly in his chair, watching her now. Amira continues. Paul's name shows up in the document's metadata. He filed travel expenses for Zurich the same week that signature originated. Did you authorize that trip? Griffin stops, blinks. No, not that I recall. He said he needed time off last month. Burnout. Amira folds her arms. Or distance. There's a silence between them. Tense, not adversarial, but something more fragile, like an old bridge tested by new weight. Griffin finally mutters, "You think he forged my signature?" "I think someone used your inattention and your trust." That afternoon, Amira boards the subway, heading towards Midtown. She keeps her folder tucked close, the sleeves of her sweater pulled down past her wrists. The movement of the train matches the rhythm of her thoughts. Fast, chaotic, purposeful. She gets off near 35th Street and walks 3 blocks to an old brick building sandwiched between a vape shop and a closed-down dry cleaner. The nameplate on the buzzer still reads, Paul Temple, Contract Consultant. She presses it. No response. The door is ajar. She pauses at the threshold, then steps inside slowly. The space smells faintly of burnt coffee and something else. Urgency. The lights are off, but sunlight filters through dusty blinds. One desk, papers scattered, a laptop missing from its charger. Desk drawers hang open like mouths mid-confession. She doesn't touch anything. Not yet. Just observes. The chair is turned slightly, like someone stood up in a rush. A half-empty water bottle sits on the edge of the desk. An old post-it note clings to the wall above with a list of numbers and a single word. Zurich. Her eyes scan the floor. Near the desk, a folder lies crumpled against the leg of a filing cabinet. She crouches, picks it up. Inside are 3 printed contracts, nearly identical. But the metadata footers tell a different story. One from Zurich, one from New Jersey, one with no digital signature at all. She flips to the second page of the Zurich version. The same clause, the one that implicates Griffin Maddox. But something's wrong. The formatting of the page differs from the standard template Maddox Tech uses. She pulls out her phone, takes photos of each version, and slips the folder back into her bag. As she turns to leave, her foot knocks against the edge of a file cabinet. Something slides out from underneath. A black planner worn at the edges. She flips through it. Grocery lists. Meeting reminders. Boring, ordinary things, until she reaches the week of April 10th. A single sticky note pressed between the pages. Zurich packet, 2913. 4 digits. Nothing else. She stares at it for a long time before slipping the planner into her bag. Back on the train to Newark, the folder rests on her lap like contraband. She glances at the planner again. A code? A safe deposit box? A shipping label? It's a clue, whatever it is. And right now, that's more than she had yesterday. At home, she spreads everything out on her kitchen table. Contracts, photos, the planner. The window is cracked open, letting in the sound of a siren somewhere down the block. She doesn't notice. Her eyes are locked on the pages, tracing the alignment of the signatures, the spacing of the fonts, the punctuation differences. Paul Temple hadn't just sent the contract. He had rewritten it. She flips open her laptop and begins cross-referencing Griffin's previous contracts. Everything standard, predictable formatting, American legalese. But the altered version, the one from Zurich, reads like it came from a different universe. She opens the black planner again. Zurich packet, 2913. If Paul left in a hurry, he didn't destroy everything. He stored it, somewhere. She gets up to refill her coffee, her eyes still locked on the numbers. At that moment, her phone buzzes. It's Reggie. "Hey," he says. "I ran a trace on that IP you mentioned. Zurich, definitely. It bounced through a VPN, but it started at a commercial server used by corporate contractors." "You think Paul sold the contract?" "I think someone bought the opening and he delivered it. You might be holding the only proof." She hangs up and stares at the post-it again. 2913. She's so deep in thought that she doesn't hear the knock at first. But then, faintly, 3 soft taps at her front door. Her blood stills. No one visits this late. She walks to the door, looks through the peephole. No one there. She opens the door slowly. A manila envelope lies on the floor. No return address, no markings. She picks it up. Inside, 1 sheet of paper. Typed. "You've already dug too deep. Stop before you're buried." Her breath leaves her in a rush. She sets the envelope down carefully, then locks the door, deadbolt and chain. She returns to the table and underlines the post-it again. This isn't just an investigation anymore. It's a warning shot, and she has no intention of retreating. At 2 a.m., while cross-referencing travel records, Amira finds Paul Temple expensed a trip to Switzerland during the exact week the digital signature appeared from Zurich. The key turns with a click, and behind the cold metal door waits a single envelope, sealed with a red wax emblem marked L. The hallway is silent except for the low buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Amira Cole exhales slowly, standing motionless in the storage facility in Jersey City, her breath fogging the air even though it's spring. The receptionist had barely looked up when she handed over the key. "Someone dropped this off 8 weeks ago. Said he'd come back for it. Never did." Now here it is. Locker 2913. A number that had haunted her since she pulled that black planner from beneath Paul Temple's overturned filing cabinet. Everything about the last 48 hours had been motion and silence. Racing trains, locked doors, cryptic warnings. But this moment? This is stillness, dread and curiosity braided together. She removes the envelope, careful not to smudge the wax seal. It's heavier than she expects. No return address, no name. Just that single letter, L, pressed into the wax. Martin Lattimore's signature flourish. He always liked to sign with only an initial. Subtle vanity pretending to be discretion. She slips the envelope into her coat, thanks the receptionist on the way out, and hurries back into the wind. In her apartment, the air feels different. She double-checks the new locks she installed 2 nights ago and draws the curtains tight. Then, at her table, she places the envelope down like evidence in a trial. The wax is unbroken. She hesitates, then cuts the flap. Inside, a USB drive slides onto the wood with a soft clink. There's also a folded memo, thick stock paper dated 6 months before the lawsuit. Across the top, confidential, internal legal strategy, for counsel eyes only. Her heart kicks hard against her ribs. She unfolds the page. The memo is from Martin Lattimore to the Alter Holdings Executive Board. The language is cold, clinical. Suggested contractual pressure points, it reads. Pretextual litigation strategy. Use of digital signature rerouting in case of resistance. Her fingers tighten on the paper. These aren't just notes. This is a manual for deception. One paragraph leaps out. If Mr. Maddox proves reluctant to renegotiate, prepare legal action built on document edits and jurisdictional ambiguity. Target company valuation manipulation through media and regulatory tactics. She sets the memo down like it burns. Then she plugs in the USB. The screen fills with folders. Alter negotiation Q3, projected damages simulation, Zurich routing. Inside one document, a line item labeled litigation leverage forecast, 23.4 million. They budgeted profit from the lawsuit. They anticipated winning through manufactured pressure, not evidence. Amira leans back in her chair, eyes closed. This isn't just about Griffin Maddox. It never was. This is how power works in silence. This is how people lose everything without ever knowing what was taken from them. She picks up her phone and dials. Reggie answers on the third ring, groggy. Please tell me this is about lunch and not espionage. I found it, she says. A memo from Lattimore, planning the lawsuit in advance. It's real, Reggie. They orchestrated all of it. Jesus, he mutters. Okay, bring it. I'll get it scanned and backed up. Any traceable IP? There's more. A file labeled Zurich routing. Looks like they masked their signatures through VPN chains. But it originated with Lattimore's personal account, at least once. There's a pause. You're sitting on a landmine, Amira. She knows. She can feel it pulsing beneath her floorboards. That night, she walks the folder to the diner near Reggie's office. He's already waiting in the back booth, a plate of fries between them and 2 mugs of burnt coffee steaming gently. She hands over the USB and memo. His eyes widen as he reads. This is premeditated. This isn't just fraud, it's conspiracy. Can you verify the digital trail? Match it to Lattimore's device logins? I'll send it to my guy at the tech desk. Might take 48 hours. She nods, glancing towards the front window. A man sits 2 tables away, alone, watching her. Pale blue eyes, crisp gray suit, a newspaper in hand but untouched. She lowers her voice. I think I'm being followed. Reggie glances casually in the man's direction, then back. He was outside the courthouse 2 days ago, wasn't he? She nods. You've been made. Later, back in her apartment, she reinforces the deadbolt, then creates 3 encrypted backups of the USB. One she hides in a hollowed-out book of constitutional law, another in the freezer, tucked behind a bag of frozen peas. The third goes into an envelope she addresses to herself and mails at the 24-hour post box down the street. Just in case. By midnight, she's at her table again, surrounded by printed contracts, highlighted memos, and a growing outline she's titled Pretext Strategy, Evidence Chain. She draws arrows connecting Paul Temple's expense report to the Zurich IP address. She notes the timestamp of Lattimore's directive. She overlays Elise's whispered confession about altered metadata. The picture is forming, a company fabricating legal crises to acquire rivals. The suit against Griffin Maddox was never about wrongdoing. It was about opening a door wide enough for takeover. And they almost succeeded, because Griffin trusted the wrong people. Her phone buzzes, a new message, no name. You've made enemies. Choose your next move carefully. Her stomach clenches, but her hand is steady as she deletes the message and locks her phone in the drawer. She walks to the window and peers out. The street below is quiet. A few cars, a flickering streetlight. Newark doesn't sleep, not really, but tonight it feels like it's holding its breath. She turns back toward the table, toward the evidence, toward the red wax seal now resting in an ashtray like a broken promise. Tomorrow, she tells herself, this goes to court, and no one is ready for what she's bringing with her. A plain white envelope is slipped under Amira's door. Inside, a single sentence scrawled in block letters. You've made enemies. Choose your next move carefully. I was in the room when they said it, the young woman whispers. They didn't want a settlement. They wanted destruction. Her voice trembles as she clutches a chipped ceramic mug between both hands. Across the table, Amira Cole studies her in silence. Elise Navarro looks even younger in person than she did in the grainy staff directory photo Reggie had unearthed. A narrow face, tired eyes, and that look of someone who's seen too much too fast. The diner hums around them, but at their booth in the corner, the air is frozen. They kept using that word. Pressure, Elise continues. They said if Griffin didn't fold, they'd force him into a corner. Lattimore called it leverage engineering, like it was just a business model. Amira says nothing at first. Her hands rest on the edge of the table, fingers loosely laced, but her eyes never leave Elise's face. She thinks back to her own father's warnings, told in long walks through the Bronx and whispered over chessboards. The higher they sit, the quieter they step when they come for you. Now she's watching one of them, a girl who was once part of the machinery, crack under the weight of her conscience. You're doing the right thing, Amira says softly. I'm scared, Elise replies, her voice barely audible. Not for me, for my father. He runs a dry cleaner in Flatbush, keeps his head down. He doesn't know any of this. Amira reaches into her coat and pulls out a small printed affidavit form. We'll file for protective witness status, quietly. Reggie knows someone at the paper who can shield your name until we go to court. Elise nods but keeps her eyes down. Her fingers tremble as she signs the form. Back at her apartment later that evening, Amira finds the lights flickering when she walks in. Odd? She's certain she turned them off before leaving. She closes the door and freezes. Her binder is on the floor, her notes scattered, not taken, just disturbed. A silent message. Someone had been inside. She checks the windows. Locked. No sign of forced entry. Her encrypted drives are still hidden, but her chair is pulled slightly out, angled toward the table like someone had been reading. Not stealing. Watching. She calls Reggie. They didn't take anything, just left it messy enough to know they were here. He swears under his breath. You need to move, now. Not yet, she says. We don't run, we document. Later that night, she visits Griffin Maddox at his estate. He's seated behind the vast desk in his library, the one that used to intimidate her. Now it just looks like what it is, a table built for hiding. I didn't expect you tonight, he says, standing. You're going to want to sit down. She lays out the memo from the Zurich packet, the signed affidavit from Elise, and 3 highlighted pages connecting Lattimore's strategy to internal Alter Holdings meeting minutes. Griffin reads, silent. Then again, slower. When he finally looks up, he's pale. They planned to bankrupt me, with fake evidence. They never needed the truth, Amira says. They just needed to keep you busy, distracted, publicly tarnished. So by the time you realized what was happening, your company would already be in their hands. Griffin exhales. You came prepared. I always am. You just never noticed. She doesn't say it with malice, just fact. Griffin nods. We need to bring this to court. We will, Amira replies. But we start with Elise. Her statement breaks their timeline. It proves intent. They work late into the night, transforming evidence into an airtight chain. By dawn, the affidavit is notarized, Elise's anonymity formally requested, and the memo filed as supplemental material in the motion to dismiss. But the silence the next morning is deafening. No rebuttal from Alter, no denial, no leaks. They're circling. That evening, Amira returns to the diner, this time alone. Reggie slides into the booth across from her, handing her a manila envelope. What's this? Security footage from Elise's father's shop. Someone smashed the window last night. Didn't take anything. Just left this. He pulls out a photograph. It shows a cracked front window and taped to the inside. A note. Stay quiet. Amira closes her eyes. They know she talked, she murmurs, Reggie nods. And they're not playing anymore. Oisons. Later that night, Amira moves to a small one-bedroom apartment owned by Reggie's cousin in Hoboken. Retirees live in the neighboring units. The walls are thin, but the door locks are strong, and the building manager knows how to mind his business. She doesn't unpack. Instead, she opens her laptop and begins stitching together the entire case like a quilt. Elise's testimony, Paul's planner, the Zurich packet, the metadata discrepancies, the budget projections marked litigation leverage. Each piece fits, each truth buried in bureaucracy. She emails 3 copies to 3 separate lawyers, then uploads a redacted version to a secure journalist Dropbox. Then she prints one more backup and seals it in an envelope marked, "If I disappear." The next morning, Griffin calls. Elise was contacted last night. Threatened? Not directly. A man showed up at her father's store, said he was an insurance assessor, asked for her by name. Amira's voice sharpens. They're probing, seeing if she'll fold. She's not, Griffin says. She said she's ready to speak publicly if we move forward. Amira stares at the window, at the soft gray light just beginning to filter through the blinds. They're scrambling, she says. They know it's falling apart. Griffin pauses. We move now? We go public, she says. All of it. Press conference, full transparency. That's war. No, Amira replies. War is what they started. This is us ending it. Amira receives a text. Your witness has a father. Keep that in mind. Let them come for me, Amira says, her voice level into the wall of microphones. Just make sure the world is watching. The courthouse steps are lined with press, tripods clustered like metal weeds, flashbulbs exploding, reporters jostling for position. Above them, gray clouds threaten rain. But Amira Cole doesn't flinch. Her navy dress is simple. Her shoes are scuffed. Behind her, Griffin Maddox stands silently, his hands folded, the man who once mocked her now deferring to her completely. And to her left, Reggie records from the side, capturing every word for the people who won't see it on the evening news. She continues. Alter Holdings fabricated evidence. Their legal counsel orchestrated a multi-million-dollar campaign to destroy a man's reputation, all to seize a company they couldn't earn honestly. They planned it, documented it, executed it with surgical cruelty, and they nearly got away with it. There's a hum from the crowd. Gasps, murmurs, questions hurled too fast to answer. But Amira doesn't break stride. I was not hired to represent Griffin Maddox. I was cleaning his hallway when this case exploded. But I studied the law when no one was watching. I did it in silence. And now, we speak together. Loudly. The flash of bulbs is blinding now. One reporter, tall with a fedora tucked low over her eyes, raises a hand. Miss Cole, do you consider yourself a whistleblower or a legal advocate? Amira doesn't hesitate. Both, and neither. I'm someone who couldn't stay quiet, that's all. The press conference lasts 20 minutes. No questions are answered directly. Only statements. Only truth. Elise remains hidden, her safety the priority. But her affidavit, along with a printed copy of Lattimore's memo, is included in every press packet. By the time Amira steps down from the podium, her hands are shaking. Griffin catches up to her by the courthouse door. You just detonated a grenade. They needed to feel the heat, she says. You're a target now, not just in the courtroom. I already was. They say nothing more. That evening, Amira returns to Reggie's borrowed apartment in Hoboken. The hallway is quiet. A few muffled televisions flicker through cracked doors. She unlocks the door, steps inside, and places her bag on the table. Her phone buzzes. Blocked number. She answers. No greeting, just a voice. Older, slower, full of ice. You've made yourself a symbol, but symbols can be erased. Amira doesn't respond. You want to play hero, that's your mistake. Walk away now. Take your little witness with you, or we come for more than the facts. The call ends. She stands still for a long moment, then sets the phone down and exhales. Calm, focused, terrified. Reggie arrives an hour later with a folder in hand. West just filed to withdraw, he says, citing conflict of interest. Amira blinks. Lauren Kessler. She's out. They're scrambling. She's protecting her license. Lattimore? Gone. No appearances, no statements, nothing since last week. His office claims he's on medical leave. She laughs once, dry and bitter. Vanished. Reggie leans on the table. You're close. You know that, right? I can feel it, she says. But it's not enough to expose them. We need to reverse the damage, file the countersuit, and we start with witness protection for release. Already in motion. Maddox's private lawyer is drafting the filing as we speak. Damages, defamation, attempted corporate sabotage. She sits down, rubbing her temples. Good, she mutters. Then we don't just fight back. We build forward. The next morning, Amira takes the subway alone to meet with Griffin at a private firm in Tribeca. He greets her in a quiet conference room, dressed in a gray sweater for once. Not a suit. There's something I need to say, he starts. She raises an eyebrow. I let this happen, not because I was evil, because I was distracted, because I trusted the wrong people and didn't look past my own comfort. Amira studies him. Are you saying sorry? I'm saying I was asleep. You woke me up. She nods. Then stay awake. They review the counterfiling. It's solid, precise. It outlines every piece of evidence, every inconsistency, every act of manipulation. Griffin signs it without hesitation. Outside, the rain finally begins. Not a storm, just a steady wash, cleansing the city's grime. They exit together under one umbrella, and for a moment they look not like allies, not like defendant and counsel, but like survivors. Two people who saw something monstrous and refused to look away. That afternoon, the news cycle explodes. Headlines flood social media. Maddox breaks silence, conspiracy at the core. Ex-maid turned legal crusader. Lattimore named in fraud investigation. At Reggie's office, Amira watches the coverage, her arms crossed, eyes narrowed. This isn't about me, she murmurs. It's about what they've done to everyone else. How many companies did they take like this? How many people just gave up and vanished into bankruptcy? Reggie nods. You're not just a story anymore. You're a warning. That evening, as the sun sets over the Hudson, Amira receives a text from Griffin. Be ready. They'll hit back harder now. She types a reply, then deletes it. She doesn't need to say anything. She's already made herself heard. Reggie rushes in with news. Lattimore vanished this morning, and Lauren Kessler just filed to recuse herself. This isn't about money anymore, Amira says. It's about the truth, and who still gets crushed by it. The courtroom is packed, not just with attorneys and journalists, but with bus drivers, custodians, delivery workers, ordinary people in wrinkled uniforms and worn shoes who've taken time off to watch the woman in the navy dress. They sit in rows, usually filled by corporate advisors and white shoe interns, but today, the seats belong to the ones who mop, deliver, build, and fold. And they watch Amira Cole not like she's a lawyer, or a prodigy, or even a symbol. They watch her like she's one of them, which she is. The judge enters, his robe trailing behind him like heavy shadow. He doesn't glance at the cameras in the back, or the news anchor in the second row. His attention goes straight to the folder in front of him. Exhibit D. We will begin with new evidence submitted by the defense, he says. Amira stands. Her voice is steady. Not loud, not theatrical, just clear. Measured. True. Your Honor, we present Exhibit D, a chain of internal emails from Mr. Paul Temple to Mr. Martin Lattimore, dated 2 months prior to the original lawsuit filing. These emails reference strategies to destabilize Mr. Maddox's company and secure asset leverage through staged legal maneuvers. One message reads, quote, "Walker won't see it coming. Make sure Paul handles the signature trail." Gasps spark from the gallery like static. The judge lifts a brow. Authenticity confirmed? By 3 independent forensic analysts, Amira replies. Metadata matches known device logs, IP address traces to Alter Holdings' secure VPN. The new counsel for Alter stands, a stiff-faced man in a navy tie, clearly brought in for damage control. He clears his throat. We do not deny the existence of the emails, Your Honor, but we believe they've been taken out of context. Amira moves to the center of the courtroom. She clicks a remote, and a projection appears on the monitor. The full thread. Responses from the board. Laughing emojis. Plans for asset liquidation. A spreadsheet titled Projected Financial Recovery. Lawsuit Strategy Q4. The numbers are chilling. The judge reads, then looks up. Do you have a response? The man hesitates. Not at this time. Griffin Maddox stands now, slow and deliberate. No suit, no tie, just a dark sweater and eyes that look 10 years older than the last hearing. I built my company with trust, he says, and it nearly cost me everything. But what matters now isn't clearing my name. It's understanding how easily it could have happened to anyone who didn't have someone like Miss Cole. He turns to Amira. She wasn't supposed to be heard. But she is. Loudly. Clearly. Truthfully. She meets his gaze only briefly, then looks away. She's not here for thanks. She's here to finish what she started. Elise Navarro, she calls. Elise stands from the back. Pale coat, tight fists, but eyes ablaze. She walks forward like she's pushing through water. She takes the oath, her voice shaking only once. I was told to alter the document metadata, she says. Martin Lattimore said it was standard practice, that no one would know. We deleted files, rewrote logs. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid. I was 23 and he was my boss. The judge's eyes remain unreadable, but he nods once as she finishes. And I'm here now because I couldn't sleep another night keeping it in. For a long moment, the room is silent. Then Amira clicks again. On screen appears a video. Grainy footage of Martin Lattimore entering a private banking office in Zurich. The timestamp is days before the contract appeared in Griffin's files. This was secured through an investigation launched by Mr. Maddox's legal team, Amira explains. It confirms his location, the withdrawal timing, and the IP rerouting used during the forged signature upload. The judge looks at the screen for a long time, then at the defense, then back to the prosecution. Given the weight of the evidence, he says, the credibility of the witness, and the plaintiff's failure to offer meaningful rebuttal, I am dismissing the case in full. A collective breath releases across the room, but he isn't finished. Furthermore, this court is referring all relevant materials to the United States Attorney's Office for potential prosecution under federal fraud statutes. The gavel lands. Court is adjourned. There's no eruption, no applause, only silence, heavy, reverent, as though everyone in the room understands what's just happened, something rare, something true. Outside, the cold wind rushes over the courthouse steps. The press swarms like birds startled from trees. But Amira walks slowly, calm, her binder pressed to her side. A reporter calls out, Miss Cole, are you returning to law school? She doesn't stop. Another shouts, Will you take other cases like this? She turns slightly, voice clear above the crowd. This wasn't about one man. It was about a system, a structure that depends on silence, and I chose not to stay silent. Behind her, Griffin nods once. And somewhere in the crowd, Elise stands with her father. Tears on her cheeks, pride in her posture. The storm had come, but it passed, and left something else in its place, something better. Amira receives a text from Griffin. "Be ready, they'll hit back harder now." Amira Cole never imagined she would become a symbol. She never asked to be. But sometimes history doesn't wait for permission. It chooses people who carry silence in their bones and asks them to speak. What began with an empty defense chair and a folder full of annotated contracts became something much bigger. It became a confrontation not just with a legal system that bends under wealth, but with the quiet complacency that allows injustice to pass unnoticed. And in that courtroom, beneath marble ceilings and cynical smirks, Amira Cole did not just speak. She was heard. In the days that followed the case's dismissal, the world didn't change overnight. Headlines faded. Executives returned to boardrooms. The machine that had almost crushed her roared back to life. But it wasn't untouched. A crack had been made, a precedent set. Somewhere in Flatbush, a dry cleaner father walked taller, knowing his daughter's truth had been believed. In Newark, night shift workers read articles with coffee-stained fingers and whispered, "She was one of us." And in quiet kitchens across the country, people saw their own daughters, sisters, mothers in the woman who once cleaned floors and now commanded attention in court. Griffin Maddox offered her everything after that: legal scholarships, consulting contracts, even a place on his board. She declined them all, politely, firmly. She didn't want gratitude carved in dollars. She wanted something harder to buy. She wanted change. So she built it herself. The People's Law Project began at a fold-out table in Harlem. Amira used her own savings to rent the space. Reggie helped file the non-profit paperwork. Elise volunteered part-time while finishing school, and soon, the project grew beyond their expectations. They translated eviction notices, rewrote benefits applications in plain language, and stood beside whistleblowers too afraid to speak alone. They didn't win every fight, but they showed up. And in a world that so often turns away, showing up was revolutionary. Amira kept the binder from the Maddox case, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. Inside it, she tucked a copy of the memo with Lattimore's seal and Elise's original affidavit. Not because she needed proof, but because others would. For every person who still believed truth was only truth when printed in legalese, she carried evidence that it could come from a woman with an apron and a memory like steel. Sometimes, late at night, she would think of her father. She imagined him watching from that quiet place beyond the world, smiling at the daughter who had once whispered, "They'll have to listen." He had believed in her when no one else did. And now, the world believed too. Amira's story wasn't about the fall of one executive or the exposure of one fraud. It was about the hidden weight so many carry, the secrets stuffed into drawers, the wrongs brushed beneath profit margins, the injustice that hides not in violence, but in policy. It was about legacy, who gets to leave one and who is erased from it. And it was about redemption, not just for Griffin Maddox, but for a system too long tilted against those who clean the rooms, but never sit at the table. Forgiveness, too, lived in this story. Not the kind granted cheaply, but the kind earned slowly, through recognition and reform. Griffin changed, not with words, but with actions. He restructured his company. He offered equity shares to long-serving staff. He created a whistleblower protection division, led by Elise. Amira never saw herself as a reformer. She just couldn't sit still. That restless urge to speak, to fight, lived inside her even when she was scrubbing stairwells or reviewing case law by flashlight in a basement apartment. Her strength wasn't loud. It was precise. It was built not on confidence, but on discipline. Years later, when a reporter asked her what moment defined her most, she didn't name the courtroom. She didn't cite the press conference. She said it was the night someone broke into her apartment and rearranged her notes, not to steal, but to intimidate. She had sat on the floor that night, every muscle in her body shaking, and decided not to give up. That was the moment she became who she was meant to be, because justice, real justice, is not a destination. It is a path. Uneven, winding, often lonely, and Amira walked it, not for applause, not for history books, but for the people who can't afford to. One day she received a call from a woman who cleaned offices in Midtown. The woman had found something strange in a shred bin, a half-burned invoice, a flagged transfer. She was scared. Amira listened. Then she said the same words that had carried her through the darkest hours. "You're not alone." That was the philosophy that remained. That silence is not safety. That truth, even when fragile, deserves a voice. That we inherit legacies not just from bloodlines, but from the choices we make when no one else will act. The People's Law Project continues to grow. They've opened satellite offices in 3 states. They've defended hundreds, protected dozens more. And in every hallway, every intake form, every laminated flyer pinned to a cork board is the echo of Amira Cole's first declaration in that courtroom. "I'll represent him." She represented more than just a man. She represented everyone who ever thought they weren't qualified to speak. Everyone who'd been told they didn't belong. Everyone who had to fight twice as hard to be believed. If you believe in the quiet strength of those who rise when no one calls their name, if you believe that truth begins in small acts of courage, then leave a comment saying number 1. And subscribe to our channel for the next story that dares to say what others won't. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it wears an apron, and still it rises.